Welcome to the Good Ride. I'm James Beastie, and this is the 2026 Capita Powder Glider. Seems to have the same shape as before, but there seems to be a mellow camber profile between the feet. It says flat to rocker in the books, but I felt some camber here. And I finally got on a 162, so I want to give you my perspective on that versus the 58 that I've ridden a lot over the years. This is one of the best floaters I've ever ridden, and while this light, easy flexing, pretty poppy ride for what it is, can be really bucky and bouncy in uneven powder days and soft uneven snow in groomers. This just has some of the easiest, most effortless float I've ever experienced in my life. We had an epic beginning of the season with just powder day after powder day, light and fluffy, thick and wet, and everything in between. And when I got this, it shut off. So I sat and waited for like over a month. And then I finally got this on a day where it stormed forever and dropped like chest high powder, but they closed the mountain down and it was unsafe to go anywhere else because the winds were excessive. It was whiteout conditions. And when the weather finally cleared, the temperature rose quickly. So I got it in some pretty good snow and compared it against the Stranda Tree Surfer 162, the Weston Japao 164, and the Telos Deros. You can see my in-depth comparison of that on Patreon if you're a paid member. I rode this with Atlas Step-On, Burton Ion Step-On, and Burton Wave Range X Pro Step-On boots, as well as my trusty Union Force bindings and Nitro Team TLS boots. I also took this out on a few groomer days just to see how this mellowish camber underfoot did and compared it to the Stranda Tree Surfer, a great groomer carver as well as great powder board, and the Stranda Shorty 164, another great groomer carver and pretty good powder board as well. And this is one of the few honest, objective, unbiased reviews out there for you, the consumer. And I can do that thanks to your support and the support of our sponsor, Blower Board Shop. So if you want to support a store that's been selling to snowboarders longer than most resorts have allowed snowboarders on the hill, and you want to support honest, objective content, buy through our links to Blower Board Shop. It greatly helps us both. Now, when it comes to sizing, on paper, this 62 would be way too big for me. But this is the size I want for super deep, low angle pow days. If I was riding at medium to steeper angle powder, and I took this out on groomer's occasion and I saw more uneven snow and had to turn in tighter spots, I'd definitely go 158. That's the better call for my specs. But this is one of those boards that it's okay to size up if you want to. It's not that hard to turn because of the softer flex, taper, etc., and we'll get into that shortly. Now, when it comes to shape, this is really directional and really tapered. This has 3.8 centimeters of taper, and you can see that. This tail is tiny. This nose is massive and long. This is a unique shape that has a more centered feel than it would lead you to believe. Also though, remember, there is a little cutout in the tail and there is so little surface area in the tail, you feel like you're more set back on board, but yet you still have some landing gear. So it's an interesting setup. When you look at the camber profile, there is a little bit of camber this year. It says it's flat between the feet in the catalog that I'm looking at. But I lay it down on the table and you're seeing what I'm seeing here, a very mellow camber between the feet. Maybe I got a board that cured a little differently and gave me a little bump of camber, or maybe they're putting a mild camber in now. It really didn't change the ride much. It's still pretty forgiving for being this wide over the front foot and this tapered. But I will say that when I'm one footing and flat basing, especially in hard snow, this didn't track super well, and that's expected with that kind of taper and this short side cut that really sits more between your feet and doesn't really extend too far past your front insert. It felt a little hooky, it didn't track really well, and it felt harder to skid a turn than you would think for a board like this. And it really does feel like there isn't much effective edge on this board, and it shows that in the specs too at 97.3 centimeters. There is so much of this board is dedicated to this long floaty powder nose. Edge hold isn't great, but it's good enough for what it is. It can grip in a hard spot or two, and it won't be sketchy. Let's talk Powder Glider 162 Flex. You have a very easy flex for a board like this. It really has a nice break in the middle, which allows it to flex easier, and you can ride this in a much wider size than you normally would because of that. If you get down to the tail, it's actually pretty stiff, but with the early rise, you can butter pretty easy off this. And then looking at the nose, it's a little softer, but not as soft as you would think. And overall, this board has a fun, dynamic, poppy flex that is very easy to butter, and combined with that little bit of camber between the feet, this is pretty easy to ollie. And when you do, it has pretty good pop, especially for a board with a mellow camber and a lot of early rise in the nose and tail. Buttering's pretty easy too, but when you get this in thick, uneven snow, this can buck and bounce around a lot. Where this really shines is in clean, perfect conditions. That super deep day where you just want the easiest of float, or some clean groomers to a much lesser extent, and you just want to make some fun backseat turns, that might work. But if you see a lot of uneven snow in powder, you might want a different board. And when it comes to the turning experience, this little touch of camber between the feet helps it a good bit on groomers, but I didn't find the turning experience to be as fun as the powder racers. And I'd still really call this a powder only board. This little bump of camber helped me carve a little better than I thought. And the turn initiation is a lot easier than I thought. For this width, it just has an easy flex that allows you to twist and engage this board easier than you would think. So the turn initiation is pretty good. If you size this right, this is a tree cheetah. It does so well turning in tight spots, especially in powder. On groomers, not as much, but that's always expected with boards like these. As far as speed goes, nah. This board doesn't really like to go straight on groomers that well. This side cut and all this taper fights you a little bit, but it can go straight in powder fine. You just don't want to really mock down the mountain on this. The base glide is just great. This hung in there with really high-end bases like the Stranda Tree Surfers that has a really easy glide. And they've been doing so much with their bases. This might not be the fastest of fast out there, but it has a little bit of structure, which I actually like, and it has great wax retention as well as wax absorption and a very easy glide that'll get you out of a long traverse better than a lot of boards will. So very good, very close to the upper tier when it comes to base glide. And speaking of powder, this is an exceptional floater. All this nose and so little tail just sinks so easy and planes so well above powder, even though you're not really that set back on board. It's just special. If you see a lot of clean, deep powder, you go on cat trips, you go heliboarding, you travel out to Japan every winter, and you get a lot of untracked, beautiful powder, this is the board for you. This really does have a fun, slashy, playful, easy turning experience in powder that I truly love. It's really special. The only time I don't like it is when it gets uneven, and I've got to say, this is the kind of board I'd like to grab when it is super deep at Mount Bachelor, which most people call Mount Flatchler. It really takes a bigger board with a lot of surface area to keep your speed in powder, and this is one of the best ones out there. Even the old 58 in waist deep to chest deep snow floated well, but this would float even better in a 62. And when I was out in some semi-thick waist to chest deep powder, this just handled it no problem. It's truly a special powder board. And so overall, if you get it clean and pristine and super deep, give this a strong look. it's really special. It's not that great on groomers, but it sure does have a lot of fun, easy float in powder. It's a hard board to recommend because it's hard to get a board just for powder. But man, if you see a lot of powder, this really changes the experience, and I would love to not send this back.